welcome to this edition of the Startup Central. I'm Nayantara Rai, working from home. This is the only show of its kind on Indian television dedicated, of course, to startups, innovation, technology, disruption, entrepreneurship. Basically, if it falls under the gambit of the new economy, it's here every weekday at 6 p.m. on your favorite channel, ET Now. Well, like all the stakeholders we feature on the show, Team Startup Central thrives on constructive criticism. We want to hear from you how we can improve the show, what we should be adding to the show, what we must be removing from the show. We love your emails. Keep writing in. Our email address is right on top, suc@etnow.tv. And here's a voice that the entire startup community in India respects and looks up to. It's also his first television interview in all of 2020. I'm talking about Sanjeev Bikhchandani, the big boss at Info Edge India, the man who founded Naukri.com, has big investments in other leading startups, for example, Zomato. Sanjeev Bikhchandani makes a case of how Indian startups are flipping. Is this digital colonization? Is it a new age of the East India Company? What's going on? Why are the startups flipping? Why is Sanjeev Bikhchandani upset about it? Here is an edited excerpt of Sanjeev Bikhchandani's interview to ET Now's managing editor, Nikunj Dalmia.
It is a matter of strategic significance. I think, flipping, to help us all understand, is the act of taking an Indian company, floating a company overseas, doing a share swap, and making the Indian company 100% subsidiary of the overseas company. Now the business is still in India. The business is being done the same way. The product is being developed in India by Indians in the Indian offices. The sales are in India, the revenues from India, but the wealth creation is happening outside, right? This is one step above. It's one thing to get foreign investment into an Indian company. We love that. We are all for foreign investors. We need foreign capital, especially in risk capital. But the way flipping is happening on a large-scale basis right now, I think possibly it will create huge issues for us in the future as a nation. So flipping is problematic, according to me.
So how many companies have flipped, quote unquote, in the last 1 year or since the breakout of the pandemic?
Well, I haven't done last 6 months analysis, but over the last 5 to 7 years, I reckon, I've not done an enumeration, and maybe someone should do it, between 500 to 1,000 companies have flipped. And understand one thing, only our best startups flip, because they are the ones who are wooed by overseas investors who are nudging them to flip. Okay? Now, if 500 have flipped, and like I've said in my earlier note, and say 2% become as successful as Naukri, and 0.5% become as successful as Infosys, right? That's a future loss of 17 lakh crore rupees in market cap, as per today's stock market prices. Now, in the early 80s, HCL and Infosys were startups. Now, imagine if they'd chosen to flip at that stage. We would not see the future of the IT industry and capital markets the way we see it today. We would not see, this kind of market caps happening in India today. And that is of some concern. I think it should be of some concern. It's of strategic significance. A lot of our future value creation will happen from the startups that are flipping. So you have income from India and in India, but you have wealth from being parked overseas, all of it. There's no resident shareholder in the Indian company.
Mr. Bikhchandani, good morning. Nikunj Dalmia also joining. It's so nice to connect with you. Hope's all well. So just to take the point forward, the reason why some would argue that the startup world is getting capital and this is global capital is because startups are loss making. Very few make money for the first 3 to 5 years. And the law in India is that if you're a loss-making company, you cannot go public. You gave the example of Infosys and other IT companies, but the reason why they were able to go public is because at least they were making profits, and that's not the scenario right now.
Well, I believe it's got a little easier, although I get to study regulation in depth. But you see, most startups will not go public. Right? If you look at tech startups that have gone public, internet startups that have gone public, out of India in the last 20 years, there's InfoEdge, there's Make My Trip, there's Matrimony, there's India Mart, there's Affle, that's 5. There's Just Dial, 6. You're talking about 6 startups in the last 20 years have gone public. It's not that many. Most have trade sales, most have strategic sales. The point is that you have, and secondly, if it's bureaucracy that is driving this, then obviously rules of us must change. So I'm not saying ban flipping. I'm saying create conditions where flipping does not happen. So there has to be a package of incentives and disincentives, both. Remember, you're losing data, you're losing IP, and you're losing shareholding, ownership as a nation. And that's not a good situation.
Has Indian government done the right thing by banning Chinese? Has Indian government done the right thing by banning the Chinese apps? Because ultimately it's our data which was going to the Chinese.
So, look, but in the beginning, when there was restriction on Chinese investments and Chinese apps were banned, I was apprehensive, right? But the way it's panned out, it hasn't made much of a difference. So in hindsight, it's been all right.
I'm going to now perhaps request you to pour in your experience. You incubated Naukri.com. You understand the importance of online job portal 20 years before. That time nobody saw it. You were able to invest in Zomato, a pure bet on how the dining habits would change. Policy Bazaar, a cluttered BFSI space where Policy Bazaar gave you one-stop shop of best policy to buy. How are you looking at investing into future? Which are the 2 or 3 habits which to your mind are going to be big scalable habits and business opportunities for an investor like yours?
Don't invest top down. We don't do macro analysis and say this sector, this trend, this habit, and therefore now let's find a startup. We simply meet hundreds of startups every month, maybe, and we figure out what's bubbling through. And if an idea looks interesting, team looks good, getting early stage traction, showing natural traction, solving an unsolved problem, we back it with a small sum of money. And then over time, if it does well, we back it with more and more money. And yes, sometimes we succeed, sometimes we fail. But, so Zomato and Policy Bazaar have been 2 of our investments that are regarded as great successes. We have other promising companies, but they're earlier stage. Let's see how many make it. And we continue to invest. So it's really a bottom-up approach, not a top-down. So for example, we've invested in this company called Shop Kirana. Now, Shop Kirana is counterintuitive. In a world of organized retail, in a world of online retail, these guys are taking a bet that they can help the very tiny Kirana store, the underserviced Kirana store, underserviced by distributors and by big companies. They can help them become more efficient and profitable by doing the last mile distribution to them on a same day or next day basis, and in tier 2 India, and it's showing good traction. So it's counterintuitive. It's a small bet we've taken. It looks like it could be all right. Let's see.
If I speak to the existing shareholders of InfoEdge, 50% tell me they are buying it for your current businesses, which is Naukri.com, Jeevan Sathi, 99 acres. Other 50% tell me they are buying it because InfoEdge has actually incubated a lot of businesses. So next couple of years, what will be bigger for you? The incubated businesses or the current organic businesses?
Look, we are an operating company. We have 4,500 employees. Of them, about 6 or 7 work in external investments, right? The remaining, the vast majority, the organization focus is to run our current businesses. And quite honestly, if we weren't making a profit in Naukri the way we are, and the way we have in the past, and the way we hope to in the future, none of the other stuff would exist. So Naukri is the foundation on which everything else has been done. And it will, so for operating businesses will remain our main focus. We will also invest.
Okay. When you look at your operating businesses, and Hitesh and we interact a lot, but in your understanding, has the pandemic made these operating businesses much more bigger? And for, let's say, even Policy Bazaar or even Jeevan Sathi, do you think this pandemic in a sense has completely changed the dimensions of growth and importance and relevance?
Well, it's a mixed bag, right? It's different businesses. So we saw Jeevan Sathi growing nicely right through the lockdown. Naukri, on the other hand, was badly impacted because people were simply not hiring, or they were hiring fewer people, right, for the first few months. Then 99 acres was hit really badly because for the first 3-4 months, nobody was buying real estate. Okay, but now things are coming back. But yes, it has taught us a lot. If you'd asked me in February or January, hey, do you think you can work from home? And I would have laughed at him and said, no way. We are a line of sight company. We work in teams, we work together, we work from office. We actually went to work from home about 10 days before the lockdown, before the government even began to talk about work from home, because we figured that it's probably coming. And we had, we had people we had moved 1 or 2 people from our CSR team. The moment the videos began to come from Wuhan and it looked like it might spread all over the world, we put 2 people from our CSR team and just track this thing. I want daily MIS. So we were getting daily MISs on the spread of COVID around the world. And when the first case happened, which was reported widely, of the Air India flight that came from Italy, and there was a passenger, and he was identified as the first real case who spread it to people in Delhi and then Agra. So one of my senior colleagues' spouse was cabin crew on that flight, and she had been told to go to quarantine. So he told us that he's also going to quarantine. That's when he first figured, okay, it's reaching here. And so we went into work from home 2 weeks before the lockdown, 10 days before the lockdown, and I think I've been pleasantly surprised by work from home. I had thought it'd be very hard, but it's been fairly seamless, and we are able to do almost everything from home and do it pretty effectively. Now, that does not mean we'll not go back to office when the pandemic recedes, when COVID recedes. We obviously will. But we have been pleasantly surprised. Our salespeople were doing 2-3 sales calls a day, prior to the pandemic. Now on video, they're able to do 10 or 12 sales calls a day. Not that sales are growing because it's a tough environment, but the activity is a lot higher.
Last decade, in a sense, has been dominated by the US tech giants in terms of advertising, in terms of cloud growth, in terms of our daily life and the data sharing. How do you see the dominance of the top 4-5 US firms moving in this decade? Are we in for a big breakdown there? Are we in for very strict laws for data sharing? What will happen to that end of the economy or that part of the world?
That's that's kind of hard to predict. I mean, there's a lot of activity and talk there. I think governments and public are concerned about increasing concentration of power and data, with a few companies. So these companies, I think, if they want to stave off restrictive regulation, will have to openly declare policies which demonstrate that they're going to be responsible, right? Otherwise, there will be increasing public pressure to put restrictions on them. And beyond a point, that pressure may be hard to resist.
How do you see trends shaping up in the healthcare stroke the startup space? Because that's where all countries would be spending more, whether it is on the government side or also on the public side, whether it is consolidation of the pharmacy market or more innovation happening in terms of telemedicine. How excited are you about investing in that space? Because that's one space where you don't have a large presence.
We've got 2 or 3 things. So a significant chunk of policy with our sales happens from health insurance policies. We've invested in a company called MedCords out of Kota, of all places. which is into rural healthcare, right? And we've invested in a sort of a pharma, an online pharma distribution company out of Bombay. These are small experiments. We are studying it. See, up until now, we have seen a lot of healthcare startups, and we weren't convinced how many of them would make a profit, right? And we still like to apply that prism that we should know at least how you could make a profit and when you could make a profit. Whether or not you make one, remains to be seen. But can you make a profit? And there, I think we have been a bit challenged in the healthcare space for maybe it's our lack of understanding as to how many of these companies will make a profit.
How many startups do you always examine for investing, and how many startups do you actually say no to? Because your list of no is far greater than the list of yes.
Yes, of course. So we've invested about 30 to 35 startups in the last 13 years. We must have seen about 7 to 10,000, right? Now, we've had a very long list of declines, which, if we had invested, we might have made a lot of money. So that happens. So the issue is not what you say no to. The issue is the ones you say yes to, are they doing well? So if you're slightly conservative and you don't spray and pray, you will identify good ones and only back them. But of course, you make mistakes.
Three things which you always look at. Before saying yes to a startup. What are the 3 things which are part of your checklist?
I would say 3 or 4 things. First is, look, is there evidence of natural traction? Is it solving an unsolved problem? Is it getting traffic without advertising? Is that traffic growing? Zomato got that, Naukri got that, right? 2 is quality of team. Are they committed? Are they good? Will they stay the course? Right? 3 is this business, does it have a moat? Can it build a moat? Is it building IP? Is there network effect? Okay. And 4 is competitive environment. Is there an established incumbent is going up against? If it is, there's a problem. These 4 things are very important. And of course, there are 20 other things, but these 4 things are really important.
I have 2 more questions before we allow you to escape, because it's a rarity for us to get you on ET now. How do you see the platform business moving? Because that's where everybody wants to be. The network effects, as we famously say. Reliance is trying to create a platform. Amazon has created a platform. Microsoft has a platform. Where do you see that business moving?
So I think people have to identify, in what area they want to build a platform. And if there's already an existing platform that is established, it gets very hard for you to beat that unless you're doing something differentiated in a relevant manner. So it's a good idea to build platforms now, in spaces where there aren't too many, right? Yes, I mean, the platform economy can be highly profitable, but all the profits typically go to number 1. Platforms usually are a winner-take-all market.
Do you see disruptive trends in the unorganized market? Because the common pitch is that India has a very large unorganized market. The platform players and organized players will eat into all. The Kirana guys will find it difficult to struggle. The Nukkar chemist shop will not survive. Do you think we are staring at very large disruptive trends in the unorganized space because of technology, digital and platforms?
I haven't seen too many unorganized shopkeepers. Kirana stores go out of business because Amazon came in or Flipkart came in or organized retail came in, right? I mean, 1.3 billion and growing, it's a large economy. The unorganized sector guy also adds value to his set of customers in his microgeography, right? So as long as he can keep adding value and as long as he adopts digital. So for example, this Dukaan Tech that's come up. There are 5 or 6 companies offering Dukaan apps, including one that we've invested in, .pay, right? Now, as they are adopted by more and more SMEs, SMBs, small shopkeepers, they will find, they are finding tools by which they can compete with online and with organized retail. So I think, I see an evolution in India. I don't see a revolution.
A common friend of ours, Saurabh Mukherjee, in his book has made a mention on your journey. How after graduating from a business school, you decided to start your own company and not take an MNC job. Today, InfoEdge stock has created tremendous amount of shareholder value. It is at 4,000 plus. When you look back and analyze your journey of an entrepreneur, what has been the happiest moment? What has been the moment of regret?
Well, I think the happiest moment is when a customer tells you that, look, he benefited from your product. A happiest moment is when an employee or a long-standing employee tells you that, listen, I love working here. Right? A happy moment is when investors tell you, listen. So I'll tell you, my happiest moment with an investor was when it was a blue chip US-based shareholder, New York-based, who said, listen, you're getting a 25% premium on your stock price because of corporate governance. You are so well governed that people just buy your stock and they go to sleep, and they don't mind paying a higher price because you have built a reputation for corporate governance, and I think that makes us proud.
The market cap of InfoEdge is 56,000 crore, nearing $10 billion. What's next now for InfoEdge as a company? What happens in the market is a function of market dynamics. But in this decade, what is your vision for InfoEdge?
I think, look, we run the business, and we, market cap goes up, it goes down. We don't decide that. We don't influence that, except to the extent that we run the business well or we run it badly. So we focus on running the business. Now, in the business, we see hopefully an acquisition or two, which is why we did our QIP. In the business, we see our 4 verticals growing, and we acquiring leadership wherever we don't have it and strengthening leadership wherever we do have it. We expect our other verticals to turn profitable, not just Naukri. We expect to continue to invest in other startups. We expect our current portfolio of startups to grow and do well. So in the medium to long run, we hope and expect that we will own substantially or wholly maybe 4 or 5 internet businesses that are very valuable, with a pipeline of more building up. When I say very valuable, I mean in market caps upwards of $1 billion or a couple of $1 billion each.